I'm Roger Lucker, and the sound that I've lost is the sound of a starling. When I was little, a starling used to perch on the roof of our house and sing, and in its song was the song of a cockerel and some other sounds. It's a fantastic mimic, and it's something I miss. It is something I miss, and I guess I miss it for a number of reasons. Some of them are the fact that I don't live in that house anymore, so I miss that house, I miss that time. But it's certainly something I'm aware of, not seeing starlings in the numbers that I saw them in my childhood, and not seeing them so frequently in gardens and that kind of thing. So I would like a starling to sing on the roof of my house now. The thing that I found, and it's something I can hear now, is the sound of the wind in trees, and particularly the poplar trees here. They really seem to rattle away, and I find it really beautiful and soothing. And part of the way I found it was through a Japanese cartoon called Totoro, where there's loads of shots of wind in the trees, and it really made me notice them. And it's done in a kind of there's a sense of awe attached to the wind in these trees. There's something powerful in that, which is beyond the human. Is it beyond the human, or is it just about the human expressing itself on them? But there's something about it that makes me feel incredibly happy and grounded and centered all at the same time, and elevated, strangely. So that's something I found.
They are amazing. I was standing under them just now. Is it Alison?
Yes.
Has created a line of leaves over on the.
Oh, and they're poplar leaves, aren't they, by and large?
I think they probably are, but she was inviting us to listen and walk along the line, and as I moved away from the river, the sound of the trees becomes more focused, and I was moving the microphone to pick up different. As I did the walk several times with the microphone in different positions. One was pointing straight up to get those. They're
trees.
Quite phenomenal. Yeah.
I think it's partly because of the way they're placed. They're quite sparse on the branches, so they get lots of movement, I think, and maybe they clatter each other.
Yeah.
And they're quite big as well, so they really catch the wind.
But there's a sort of the first impression is that it is just white noise, but it's really not. There's not a lot going on in there that's beyond white noise. And of course, walking on leaves at the same time is generating a whole other.
I always forget how loud leaves are, especially dried leaves. I remember when I lived in London, there was a sycamore in the garden, and when the leaves fell off, they'd crash. It was quite disturbing, which is not a noise you'd think would be disturbing in London, but it was the surprise of just how loud they were when they fell. And like talking about Alison's piece and this line that she's made by walking it and then putting these leaves on, the thing that struck me first when I walked there was just how loud those were. Almost intrusively loud, because it wasn't what I was expecting, I suppose, so it intruded into my expectation. But I think, you see, one of the things it gives is a sense of, it's not just the movement of the leaves, but the way the movement moves from tree to tree. It's incredible, it's very entertaining.
It's the movement of the sound itself, isn't it, as well? I mean, it's just sitting here now, as we're talking, I can hear them coming in and out, and the picking up again now. Just non-stop motion.
Yeah, I think part of it is, it's almost as if the trees are shivering with excitement as well as, I mean, I know the wind's animating them, but there is this, there is this sense that it's more than that.
I'm Lauren Heckler.
I'm Rebecca Glover.
And I'm David Green.
Sounds that have been lost and that we've found. It was quite a nostalgic theme. So something that sets you back, makes you think of your past.
I think I find it easier to talk about finding sound than losing, what's lost.
Because as an artist, I'm using a lot of sound, and a lot of that sound is now available. For example, on the internet, which you wouldn't, I've bought quite a few sounds and things, like some music, and some Foley sounds that you can use. So it's actually, that's all opened up a whole new sound archive, which is like a new, it's like an introduction to sound again, in a way, because I think sound sounds different as well, isn't it? When it's recorded, sort of not joined up with the thing that's making the sound, that's creating the sound. It sounds quite. I find that quite interesting as well. Yeah. Just on its own, sounds on their own. Fascinating. And that sort of, the internet has definitely opened that up to me anyway.
It's quite strange to think about in terms of losing sounds.
Yeah.
That we might never actually lose sounds, but we might never actually experience the reality of them if they're all captured on the internet.
Yeah.
That in 100 years' time, someone could be listening to a sound that could not be produced in real life, but it's just a memory stored on a hard drive somewhere.
Nice thought. Yeah, interesting thought. Yeah.
Where does that sound actually exist? Is that
and recreating sounds like people like the old sound of a bell, don't they, on their phone? The old telephone bell. And you get the American style bell. Do you get a British style bell? I don't know. I know you get the American style bell.
What's the American?
In the sound
like, phone bell
libraries.
Yeah.
Is that not the state? Is not that
I don't know.
just ring?
Perhaps it's different. Yeah. I don't know, but I know it's got a distinctive. But the type of American bell. Yeah.
I think one thing that's quite interesting in terms of finding sounds is I think I often have a texture that I'm trying to listen to or trying to create a sound for, and I have to go searching for that sound to evoke a particular texture for a sound piece or something.
Yeah.
And so then it's about inventing or trying to perform, almost like Foley or something, but it's to create a texture as opposed to perform an object or something. And I find that quite interesting in terms of discovering, and so you're sort of listening to find a particular texture.
Yeah.
So some sounds, the ones say if we're thinking about sounds that are stored on the internet, they might just be ideas of where that sound should have come from, but can you imagine they might actually just be Foley artists making a sound to be like the original sound, and then maybe people would think that that's the real sound, but it's actually 2 steps removed from the original because it's a reproduction of an idea of a sound that's captured online.
Yeah. Well, I think film really almost leads how you expect sounds to hear sometimes, just like the
visuals.
It's an idea of a sound rather than
and it's so emotional. It's not actually necessarily a real.
So I recently did a little piece of footage, a little film of a swan feeding, and
I have no idea what that would sound like.
I don't know. It actually, it's not so much feeding; it's more like as it lifts its head out of the water, and it shakes its head, and it's the dropping of the water. So, but I couldn't use the sound that was the background sound because it was just traffic. I was on a bridge looking down. It was just terrible noise. So I took all the sound off, and all I've got is the sound, and I've got it from just on iTunes, of someone rowing a boat, and as the oars come out of the water, and it fits in perfectly, but it's probably nothing like a swan shaking their head. But it just sounds like, But like you say, that's probably Foleyed, and it's probably not a real boat, probably not a real oar coming out of, or it might be.
But our vision has tricked us.
Yeah, so there's probably loads of layers there. think it's just a
I think when,
total
like, if you
construction.
start recording, you start listening to things. That's what's so amazing about discovering sound, is that you realise that you don't. I think because your ears filter out so much that you actually miss so much, and so when you've got your headphones in and you're listening to something being recorded, it's like you get everything sort of trickles in. You start hearing loads more, and so you sort of discover the real sounds of something, what something actually sounds like, and it's not like. That's what's so amazing about it. Is it's not like what you'd imagine it would be like as well. So it gets really exciting.
Earlier on, I was sitting in the garden, just a bit further over there, and I was listening, and I was noticing the sounds that are close compared to the sounds that are further away, and I was thinking of it like a lens when you focus in the distance and then focus what's right in front of you. And I don't think I've thought about sound quite in that way before, in terms of focusing into something in the distance and then focusing into something in the kind of foreground. And it was really bizarre. I just hadn't.
So you were doing that yourself. You would consciously changing.
Yeah. So I was trying to listen. I couldn't work out what was going on. I think it was a load of birds like right in the distance, but they seemed to be kind of having an argument. Yeah. So they were all being really squawky, and then I'd come back into because you can change your focus and your level of concentration. So that was interesting.
That's a nice thing to exercise, isn't it? And to be, to experiment with. I mean, I'm quite sure, because I'm sort of getting on a bit, I'm quite sure there's loads of sounds that they probably, aren't there anymore. But I can't actually think of them at the moment. Well, I've been trying to think about old sounds and sounds. But I think that
one that really stands out to me, though, that I think of that you don't hear anymore is the dial-up tone of the internet. Kind of sound.
Yeah.
I remember being more musical.
Ours was really.
I was trying to think about packaging and whether the sort of, I don't know whether packaging that's changed, so more plastic covered stuff, whether that's replaced kind of more paper packaging or like holding a chip packet that used to be in paper as opposed to the polystyrene sort of ones. But that's, I mean, you've still got paper around. It's not like
it's gone.
Yeah.
It's less of a ritual, maybe.
Or corks popping. Now they're all more plastic, or twist caps.
You were talking about chapels earlier, and I grew up with my house attached to a vestry, and a chapel being next door to that. So every Sunday when I was growing up, they used to have services there, and that my bathroom was attached to the vestry. So I'd go into the bathroom to listen to them singing and to them having their service. And I remember having to be really quiet. We weren't allowed to have a bath whilst they were doing it because the plug would make a lot of noise, and we weren't allowed to flush the toilet. But they don't have as many services now, so that's not a regular thing.
But it is still active.
It's still going. They have so I think quite a few different chapels from around the area have kind of joined, and they take it in turns to hold services. Right. So it is active, but not as regularly, not every week. Yeah. So that's the sound from my childhood that I don't hear so much anymore.
Yeah. Well, I guess those kind of, the human sounds of choirs, it's likely that even though they keep it going, it's probably half the numbers as well. So it would be a very different sound. To experience.
Yeah. Mrs. Harries, though, the lady who would lead the services, would she'd play the organ, and her voice would be the one that was really loud that you could hear as well. But she passed away quite a while ago now. So even when it is there, it sounds different now to how it sounded then.
Yeah.
Mm. I also think you're drawn to sound, so I think when you grow up, and depending on where you grow up, and the sounds that surrounded you then, I think you seek them out again. So like even though maybe, so for example me with the sea, like I will, not just because I want to look at the sea, but the sound of it draws me there. So now I don't live by the sea, I still have massive cravings and urges to go to it, but it's the whole thing, it's the smell, it's the sound, it's the view.
Do you think when you do go to it, is the sound the same? Is your experience in the same way? Does it bring back?
Depends where. So if I go home, then yeah, I think I'd say so. It's an estuary where I grew up, so the sea sounds totally different.
Quite particular, yeah.
All the time, depending on where the tide is. So I haven't heard high tide for a while, because I've not been at the beach when it's been high tide. So I haven't heard the crashing of the waves against the rocks.
Yeah, that's a good one to actually, when I think about it. Yeah, because I was brought up right on the coast. And where I was brought up, it was like in a big bay. In Poole, there's a massive bay. And the water is very, very calm in there, but it stays calm all the time, most of the time, hardly ever. And it laps, when the tide's right out, it laps in a very, very particular way, I never really come across it in the same way. The way it's very incredibly gentle, these little waves come in, and the sound of those. In fact, I have actually recorded the sound of those. Actually, when I think about it, I've actually made a piece of work about it. It's all coming back to me now. So that. Yeah, that's definitely that is a sound, which I didn't really think about it in this context, but when I think about it, this idea that it is a sound that definitely is very evocative and
I'm trying to think of my London equivalent. I don't
I even think the sound of traffic,
well, I'm thinking about, because I grew up fairly close to Heathrow, when I was really young, I don't remember the planes overhead, but we're now in a flight path, and when I was a teenager, it was like if you were on the phone to someone, you actually couldn't hear the person down the other end of the phone because it was so deafening. And now, where my studio, I don't notice it quite as much back at my parents' house now, but I'm not there so often, so it's timed, so it depends what time of day it is. But where my studio is now in a flight path, and I actually I love the sound of planes in the sky. And I've got this thing where I imagine them being like these, they're like whales in the sky, because it's at a particular point in the path where it's, I think, coming into land or sort of soon after takeoff, they get really musical. It almost sounds like a note, and
they're probably coming down as well, aren't they? I think they come down and they put on that, they reverse the thrust or something, don't they, to slow themselves down. It's probably that, something like, don't know the technical thing, but it could be, couldn't it? Could be that time when they stop.
So it does sound, it is fairly similar to sort of whale song at a point. So there's something kind of really
did you
drawn to it.
also like Concord? Did you remember Concord coming? Because when I used to live over, I used to live and work in Brixton, and it used to come over like on a Wednesday. I don't know why it was a Wednesday afternoon, but you knew it was Concord.
I didn't
know. As soon as it was, you could feel it.
And the other sound I'm thinking of, I loved the sound of, was the Skelectrics set that my brothers had. And I had to play on it for hours, but that was such a specific sound that I actually haven't heard in years and years. I really loved the sound, but I also loved the wire wooling the bits and the slots in the car so that they would make them go faster.
Is that the one that goes around in an figure of 8? Yeah.
Well, you could change the configuration.
Yeah, my brother had them too.
They're really cool.
And then I think for me, strong sounds that I don't hear now are sounds that I can't hear because I can't be in the other place because it's so far away. So I lived in Japan for a little bit, and sounds that are there are quite different to sounds that are here. Obviously there's the language, but then
But
yeah,
for the language, just
there's
yeah.
like the sounds of supermarkets are really different. So in the supermarket that I would always go to, they'd play the same tune again and again and again,
Yeah.
and it's like the sound from a really annoying game on the computer, quite a basic game. So the tune is
Space Invaders type
and then it would go again and again and again. I don't know how people worked there all the time with that going. It made me feel like I was in this weird. I had my trolley and like walking along.
That's it. I love that. Great.
But it's stuck in my head, you know.
Yeah, well,
I remember it now.
Yeah, it's good.
And sound. So I was there when the frogs were singing. That's quite a really loud sound that I haven't heard here. Maybe it is here, but there's rice paddies, so there's loads of frogs.
Yeah.
Sounds of bells in temples. Sounds of there's some kind of cricket-like creature. So it goes from being the frogs to kind of like sounds of these tree bugs. Yeah.
Like cicadas.
Is it cicadas?
I don't know. Yeah. They're really distinctive. It's like I think the seasons there are more distinctive than they are here, and the creatures, you can tell
Where you are, by the creatures.
Yeah.
By the sounds.
Yeah. And they also have megaphones in the streets.
Oh, right.
So like music, it's like weird radio following you around, or public announcements. Yeah. And the sound of trains, I think that's quite a strong one. Yeah, there was a train station right near where we were sleeping, so the beep 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 of the
level crossing.
Yeah, like the bamboo things coming down to stop people from walking across.
Yeah.
And then the sound of the train coming past. Yeah. I grew up as well, trains go on the other side of the estuary, so you can hear them tooting as they go along. So that was a nice connection. I was there.
Oh, that's reminded me of a sound, from my youth, lorries going to the port for the ferry to go to France, and you could hear them, and I used to sit and dream about them, where they're going, and then you could hear the ships as well, making hoots. Yeah. I don't know if actually were ships going. I don't know if they were lorries. So they might have not been lorries. I could just hear this sound, and I think I imagined they were lorries going off. So they might not have been, but they were like 2 a.m. Well, I used to know there was ships going off, at that time. But there you go.
I hear less tractors just from living in the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian, thank you.
It's quite rambly. It's great.
Covered some ground. Cool.
Japan and back. Nice one, that was. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, it is quite, as you said, it's a very nostalgic kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology was using it as a sort of environmental thing. So it's more about the lost species. And
I was trying to think about that, but
the changes in the environment that have caused the change in sonic environment.
I think it totally depends on where you live, though. Like, I think where my family live, the sounds haven't changed that much since I was quite small. The sounds of the city are so different to sounds of the countryside.
Yeah.
But it is also, I guess it's also, I just think like it depends when you were listening. It's like because it's almost like you just have a background going on, and that it's only once you start really, I don't know.
The thing in the countryside though as well is, you know, the noise now is really different from when I was a child here. There's so many more planes in the sky than there was. There's a constant sound of planes now. It's quite subtle most of the time, but it's there. And a few years back when that volcano happened, they weren't there. Then you noticed
when
that
it
they're
changes.
there, when they came back. And I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I think there has been a lot of changes in the rural landscape as well. Even though a lot of machinery is still there, it's changed. The size of the tractors has just grown.
Yeah, they haven't. That's true.
So there may not be as many, but they're making really different noise.
What? So when Matt was interviewing Alina Rees in Llanstefan, she was saying how noisy the village used to be when she was small. She's in her 80s, but now it's quite. My memory of it is always it being quite quiet, apart from, you know, when there's a load of kids out playing and on the beach when it's a sunny day and there's loads of people down. But actually it's relatively quiet. But before, when communities were stronger, Llanstefan has still got quite a good community compared to other villages that have been really seems like they've been broken apart a little bit. But there was a lot more industry in the village then, so there was even before, maybe when people had loads of their own cars or whatever, but there would be more people walking down in the street, more people shouting to each other through windows, more people children actually just playing outside their house, and kids wandering between homes. That doesn't happen so much anymore because of the whole stranger danger thing.
It's quite tricky, I think, when not living in the same place to know that to get a sense of that change. Because I've moved around I've moved around a fair bit, but been living in London for the last 7 years, but I'm living in a different part of London, and that's really really different. And going back to where I grew up is only very occasional, so it's hard to know that real difference, I think.
So there's no stark changes when you do go back to where you grew up?
I mean, it always feels quite quiet in a way. I mean, but then I don't remember it ever being noisy, apart from the planes. I remember there being more people, but then I knew them, and because I don't live there, then I think there's plenty of other people still living there, and it's not like it's not like a sort of little village where it's maybe a more ageing population, or it's not like that, because it's sort of London, so it just moves on.
Because the village, the way, you know, I don't actually know the name of the village. The main,
we're in Drefellyn, the next one is Drefachfylindre. Right.
Yeah, you can see that must have been a lot busier. There was, you know, you can see remains of garages. And,
and there's the woolen mill, and then this whole area. I'm not sure how many, but there would have been a lot of industrial.
Would have been completely different.
And just here where we are, you know, the water would be making a racket.
In terms of species, it's quite hard to know in London again. It's like, I mean, wildlife was not something that and you notice. I do remember maybe seeing more birds, but then
I think
we've got like these.
Everywhere.
Because even sparrows have declined a lot, and then that probably makes a big difference.
Yeah, sparrows. We had loads of sparrows, and now I hardly ever see them. And then now we've got the parakeets.
It's changed.
They're so noisy. They're such a squawky bird. And so bizarre. They're just everywhere. I think they've really properly invaded.
I mean, that started just as I was leaving London. They started.
I remember the first time I saw them, I was like,
are they all over now then? Are they really are?
They really are. They're really, really all over, and I wonder which.
Wow.
You get huge flocks all over the place. They're like common. Flocks of them, and they're so noisy, and they eat. They eat so much, and there's shitloads. And just I think I wonder what they've like what they've replaced or what
Yeah.
they're competing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Alison Rudd Mumford, and thinking about the world sounds that are disappearing. I was reading the website and it was very interesting, and they were talking very much about ecological things. But the things that came to me, particularly around language, is thinking about the language that children use, young babies, and how that language is lost and changes and gradually develops into a more comprehensible sound base of words that we as adults can understand. So there's that whole range of sounds and gestures I suppose, but range of sounds certainly that young children and babies use to make themselves understood. Even going back to birth, the sound of their cries are very different for things like I'm in pain, I'm hungry. So those sounds, and they disappear over the life. So they're there in your sound, I think, in your voice forever, but they change into a more recognisable kind of vocabulary. So that's the thing that came to me most strongly about sounds that are lost.
That relates to something Penny was talking about earlier. She was talking about an exhibition, I think, that she'd been to, where it was a talk where someone was talking about the kind of building blocks of language, and that there were 6 particular sounds.
Right.
So the vowel sounds, and then a couple of distinctive consonant
Yes.
D,
Yes.
and then being the building blocks.
Yeah, and you can hear those in young children.
Yeah.
Kind of 6 to 12 months even, just trying out these sounds and how to make sounds go together. It's very interesting listening to that whole process, but those things are lost as you get into a more complex language. So that's my thoughts really on the whole subject.
And do you think that's something that we should be more conscious of? We should be trying to make more of our voices and explore the sounds.
I think so. I mean, there are adult voice workshops that you can go to that explore those basic sounds, and they're very useful in touching emotions that have been locked inside you. So there's a relationship between the sound and the emotion, and bringing the sound back to those basic sounds that we use as children allows us somehow to release a primal emotion. So yeah, there's that. That's quite an interesting area.
I think it would be quite beneficial for us to reconnect.
Yes, yeah, certainly. I mean, for mental health problems and things, it would. But I think it's beneficial for all of us. All of us hold on to emotion. So to be able to tap into that through sound is it's a gentle way of doing it, but it's also very potent. I know I went to a voice workshop, and one of the things you have to do is shout. And I couldn't shout. I had this tiny little voice. And I think it was all about emotion. And again, go back to the original sounds. They're about emotions, about feeling hungry, about feeling pain. So there is that whole link between sounds and emotion.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things Roger was talking about was a film with the sound of the tree, the rustling in the trees was present in this film. But he also was saying there was a character who makes a very particular sound when he, it's an expression of awe, really, at a religious monument of this noise. But because it's a Japanese film, that it's then subtitled or dubbed. What happens? How do you translate that?
Yes.
You can't. 'cause
No.
it is just
It's an emotional release.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we do hold, in holding our emotions, we hold those sounds. We stop those sounds.
And we learn to control them.
We do.
And put them into more conventional, into language.
Yes,
So
that's right.
in terms
Yeah. So I think those sounds are the ones that we lose from childhood, and we lose touch with them.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My name is Penny D. Jones, and I hadn't thought about that sound of the telephone ringing. I'd forgotten. Well, I hadn't forgotten, I just hadn't thought about it. And yet that is completely different. Even, I don't know, the whistle of a kettle is also different, isn't it? And it would take me some time to actually think, but I'm sure it must be most sounds are different. And sounds, a lot of very loud noises we have, like even where I live, the tractors and things going past are really deafening. And I don't know whether they were as loud as that, because they're really big vehicles now. But I was thinking about, I can't remember now, it's drifted off now. Sounds that have gone, yeah. And then I was also talking about the ones like the silent cars, electric cars, and all these hybrid cars. They're really quiet, which is kind of nice in a way, but you need to be able to hear something to know that it's there, and when you can't hear it at all, so sounds have really changed. Of course, we never heard a mobile phone ring, and how you hear when you're in a public place and you hear a mobile phone, everybody goes to pick up their phone, and it isn't everybody's. But no, I was thinking about washing machines actually, because they're very noisy, and that would have been very, very different in the past. The sound of the mangle, or the like the twin tub.
These sounds that you are familiar with, or these sounds that you are
No, the sounds I would be familiar with, but I have to say it's not something I've thought about at all.
But
And
as an artist, you've got this kind of domestic landscape. Is one of your
Yes, I'm very interested in that.
concerns. So
Yes.
the way sounds have changed within the home. So
No, and they have, very much so. The fridges make an enormous amount of noise. But then I think there were things that were louder as well. Some things have got quieter. I'm wondering what ambient noise is like now, if you could compare ambient noise. And the thing actually that strikes me so much, and to think of the time when I was an adult and listening to it, it's like when you actually hear recordings of people talking in the 60s. And I suppose it could be to do with the equipment, the recording equipment, and what we're hearing, the production is different or has a particular ring to it, but the accents even are really different. It's like from the Dark Ages. And I think, I was a young adult, whatever, at that time, and didn't notice it. I mean, our language is changing all the time, which I'm also interested in. And recording conversations now and thinking about how, people's use of language has changed.
do you think that is mostly driven by media then, that's changed that?
I suppose it would be particularly affirming it, but it is interesting culturally how people start using a particular word. It can be outside the media even. I don't know how much you hear the word pants on the media, really, but that's a new word that I think it's very much what people invent between themselves and what ends up catching on.
But in terms of the loss of that feeds into the loss of dialects. You can almost match that to the rise of mass media, radio and television.
I'm sure, yes. Where you've got this sort of accent-less. Many people who don't have an accent.
Do you think that's the
That's
same
right.
within Wales? Do you think has that happened with
It has. Look, you were brought up here.
Yeah.
My kids were brought up here, and they don't have Welsh accents.
No.
You know?
But my understanding of the Welsh, spoken Welsh, is fairly limited in my experience of the difference between villages or towns, of how that Welsh
It is very different.
has changed.
I don't. Well, yes, I suppose in some ways, but it's still very strong. It still seems to have kept that language of the home. Yet, I suppose, with the radio and the telly,
That's what I wondered.
then, and I think some of the words, yes, and they say there's a whole new accent in Cardiff because of the teachers that the kids have, either from North Wales or West Wales, South West Wales. So the kids will adopt the accent of the teacher, and so it's become an amalgam. So it's a new Welsh accent. Now I'm sure that's going to happen, and the writing, literature, people reading, as well, and the fact that has developed so much in these last 50 years, and no, it must do definitely.
I think I guess with English, we've had it for a lot longer, the mass media. So within the Welsh language media, it's much more recent, so the process is still happening. Whereas we have lost a lot of dialects and accents have become less distinct.
But they are still there, actually.
Within the Welsh?
No, I was thinking in England
UK
they
as
are.
a whole.
They are, very definitely.
Well, accents,
And people are very proud of them.
dialects, less,
and
far
dialects.
less so.
I don't know.
I remember my mum talking to me about in the 1960s there was an effort to record dialects because there was an awareness that they were
Going to go.
disappearing.
And yet I know there's this woman who's just done one recently, recording dialects from Penzance to Aberdeen.
Really?
And loads of people come forward who are very, very proud of their accents.
And are they
And
are
yes.
they original? Or
And
have
oh
they
yeah,
learnt
no, they're original.
Because I know
definitely.
there have been
People who
moves to
cultivate
revive
them. Yes,
in
like
the same way the Cornish is being
and reviving the Welsh language.
and Welsh
in
has been
fact.
revived. To a point. Welsh never died. But
No, but it's been reactivated,
yeah,
shall we say, or
but
brought
Scots
out.
Gaelic did pretty much go.
Mm,
It's been
mm,
brought back from nothing.
Mm.
The same with Cornish.
mm.
And I gather there was something, is it Lancashire dialect? The same had gone.
Oh. I don't know, when I was up in Sheffield, the amount of words I'd never heard was really surprising. And my mother was from the north, so there were some things that I had heard, but there were things that I really didn't know. So, still there, I think, definitely. But I think there's just something about, it's so powerful how we talk to each other. And how we sort of assimilate. We want to talk like the people that we're, close to or we grow up with. And some people, I remember years ago coming across kids, and my son had it, of being able to switch between accents. Totally.
Yeah. Well, I can remember going up north to visit friends in Manchester and becoming more northern for the time and noticing that my parents would as well. But it was
But did you ever have a Welsh accent? Did you do that when you were at school?
I probably did when I spoke Welsh because
Mm.
that's how it was taught
Yes.
by Welsh
Yes.
speakers. So
Yes.
it's been with a Welsh accent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you
Where
said
you going?
you had some more thoughts on
Yes, I suddenly remembered
Yes.
last night where I grew up in London. There was this, and I never knew what they were actually saying. It was the Rag and Bone Man who came actually on a horse and cart, and he'd say something like, "Any old iron?" But I don't know, much sort of run together like it was just a noise. And the other noise I remember really well, which was the milk float, which of course was electric, and that sort of sound, which wasn't quite like that, but it was just a sort of a drony noise. And particularly, I mean, obviously the guy on a horse and cart was really something of the 50s. That's it.
My name is Dave Shepherd. I'm a visual artist. I've been a visual artist for a high proportion of my life, but I do use sound in my work sometimes. I think that's important, and I find it very interesting to kind of find the right sounds or construct sounds, or inevitably I think what I'm always doing is going back into history to find sounds. So as I work with history quite a lot, because I go back to my childhood, obviously I think of the sounds of a person's childhood and growing up are significant, and obviously some of those sounds are now defunct because society has moved on and technology has moved on, as you mentioned, technology. So I immediately, when you ask me a question like that, I think of things that I remember from the late 40s and 50s and things like that, and they're quite interesting phenomena, and also I think charming in some sort of ways, like the sounds of the milkman coming in the morning and the milk cart, and it was always horse-drawn, and you get the milk bottles jangling in the crates. You never hear that these days, but I do still get my milk delivered by the milkman, mainly because of that piece of history. I think it's important to me.
But you don't get the horse sounds.
You don't get the jingling of the milk bottles. I think the crates have gone. There used to be metal crates in the old days, so they carry the crate along, and the whole thing would jingle jangle with the glass on metal. It's things like that I think about when you ask me a question about this. And then I go back to things like, I'm about 72 years old, so I remember the lamplighter coming around at night to switch on the gas lamps with a long stick, and that would make some sort of noise. The soft purr of the lights coming on with the gas is switched on, all the lights being lit up. And the other thing, again, they're all associated with my working class background to some extent, and the sound in the morning of the tapper-upper. This was a man who used to come round again with a long stick and tap on people's windows round about half an hour before they should be getting ready to go to work. And that was quite an interesting phenomenon in many ways, but a very real phenomenon, And again, the sound of another one, it's always to do with these sounds are to do with the way that people actually did their work, so the rag and bone man. The sound of the rag and bone man, again with the horse and cart coming along and shouting rag and bone, and people would come out and they'd exchange their things like an old gas stove or an old something for rubbing stones and things like that. So there's the more I think about it, the more things I can conjure up that are associated with the subject matter of this interview. Well, I remember kind of as a child that I would go out of the house in the morning and play most 12 hours, which kids can't do nowadays because it's a much more dangerous environment. And when it was tea time, or lunchtime or something like that, you get the kind of my mum or other people's mum standing on the front doorstep and shouting the name, of the person, like, Harry, it's tea time, and that person would then come. And it worked, but you can't do that in the city these days because there's so much noise going on, and it's these little incidental things. Like for me, it's getting a reminiscence. It's the crackle of the grate, the coal burning and sitting around the fire, and the sound of the crackling wood and the timbers and the hiss of wet wood and things like that,
And are there things in your art practice that you that were a real sort of staple sound that you don't experience anymore?
Well, I do try and create them, because you think of a painter painting a picture and using colour. I was always impressed by the noise the palette knife or the brush would make on the canvas, the scrapey noise, And I think noise is implicitly locked into all the other senses, so you can't have one without the other. You can ignore them or play them down, but you certainly can't paint a painting without making a noise. You can't make a sculpture, And then for me, noise is conditioned by the seasons as well. Well, right now, the noise in my street is associated with seagulls in the chimney pots, and they're very protective of the young. So the eggs are hatching, and the street can be very quiet at 1 minute. The next minute, there's this horrendous noise of these birds circling around, attacking people, and making a hell of a din. And I've always been impressed by the romance of when it snows on Christmas Eve, and how snow can deaden sounds when you go out walking in your wellies on a peaceful night round about New Year's Eve. The snow is thick, and the sound is very different to any other time, I think. There's a softness, there's a clarity, in that sort of thing, which I've always found intriguing. But even, sound I associate with, again, because I'm so kind of used to enjoying it, is the sound of your own heart beating. When you're in bed at night, sometimes you become very conscious of your heart beating, and it's thud, 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 it's like a sledgehammer. Other times you don't even notice it, because you've got something else going on, like the springs in the bed or outside noises, So I think it's an intrinsic part of everybody's life, and it must be, obviously it'd be a rich kind of response you'll get to this in terms of how people have lived a life and what they do,
One of the things that's coming across, and as you say, with the heartbeat, is something that you, in terms of the theme of finding and losing sound, you're constantly finding it and losing it, and finding it and losing it, and it comes in and out of focus. Sometimes we're paying attention to it, and most of the time we're not.
Yeah. But I also play the saxophone not very well, but the more I get into this instrument, there's a regular way of playing it that makes sounds, and also it's made of metal, and if you tap it with your fingernail, it makes a different sort of sound, And I've often wondered if I was deeper involved with music, that the traditional way of playing it might get kind of superseded by the other noises it would make that were out of character with what you'd expect from this musical instrument, And I've always intrigued by the saxophone, that there are certain 2 octaves that you play with the regular notes, but the real clever musicians can get 3 octaves out of it, because they can find ways of playing it that were beyond the manufacturer's dreams,
So that really is finding sound.
Yeah. And I think a lot of musicians will be involved in that,
Yeah.
So immediately I've said that, I think of John Cage.
Right.
So that, in a conversation like this, and in an artistic conversation, he's bound to wander in, isn't he?
He is, isn't he?
Looking for the sound of silence.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
My name's Catherine Campbell-Dodd, and the sound that I remember from my childhood, which has completely vanished as far as I know, is the sound of the rag and bone man. When I was a child, about every 6 months or so, he'd come down the road on a horse originally, and he'd ring a bell, and then he'd shout out something completely unintelligible, which I never understood what it was, and we'd all bring out our scrap. But he was quite fussy about what he'd take. He'd only take things that he could resell on, obviously. And then latterly, when I was older, the horse went, and he just had a van, but he still used to come around and ring the bell and we'd all come out with our scrap. And I don't remember when he disappeared, but perhaps in the 80s. But I've never come across Rag and Bone Man since then.
So the sound itself then was a combination of horse and...
Yeah, a combination of horse and bell, and it was like a sort of market trader's gabble, you know, and I never did know what he said actually. But he'd be calling you out to bring out your stuff for him. But yeah, those are but particularly the bell in my mind actually, the bell followed by him calling you out with your goods. Yeah. Distinctive, very distinctive. And yeah, and you could hear him from a distance coming up the road. So you'd have already got your stuff ready for him because you knew he was about the time that he'd be coming around. But yeah, it's quite an evocative sound. Marcus and I were talking about it last week actually, and Marcus has got a tape of it somewhere, of his Rag and Bone Man. He said he realised one day that it was going to go, that sound was going to go, so he just thought, oh bloody hell, I better tape this. He says it's in a box of tapes somewhere. So I said, can you try and find it?
Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
That should be in a,
should be in a sound archive. It
yeah.
should, yeah. I'm sure such things are in sound archives, but it's quite interesting that he thought to do that. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
My name is Diarmuid Johnson, and I'm going to read you some medieval Irish. This text is, I suppose, 1,000 years old. It's the story of a king called Conrad. Van Agfut a chovaltaí ag a chlufiú, sí a charbad agus aré go mí ag áth cliath. Conacui conú findrecha móra ann. Cofide méid agus dath, sí in na négaid comad scíthe in eich. Na théag tís fod nahar chara riamh, agus ní héag tís ní bus sire, tarvling agus gafid a halimdóibh is a charfod. Sí go mí ag muir in na njalchi. We know what the orthography, we know what the individual sounds are in the language and what historically they're just the sounds of represented by the Roman alphabet. So but you can't be sure how the language sounded, but you know how to read the individual. They would letters.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can make an approximation from that.
Yeah. Can I read you part of Cad Gotha?
Please do.
My name is Diarmuid Johnson. I'm going to read you a part of Cad Gotha, which is a poem from the book of Taliesin from the 6th century. The text would be: Bím yn lliaws rhith, cyn bím ddisgyfrith, bím gleddyf gilfrith, o'r adaf panwrith, bím ddeigir yn awyr, bím seirwal sir, bím geir yn llythyr, bím llyfyr, bím pryfder, bím llygrin llyfer, blwyddyn a hanner, bím bontar triger, ar drigen a ber, bím hint, bím erir, bím corwg ymyr, bím ddarwedd yn lladd, bím ddos yng nghawad, bím gleddyf yng nganghad, bím ysgwydd yng nghad.
Cool.
Dylan.
Brilliant. So, yeah, it's really interesting as a kind of idea of these lost languages and how we revive them and find them.
But they're not really lost, they're just old and they've changed. You know, it's like a person. Can you imagine how you looked 20 years ago?
Just about.
Yeah.
From looking at photos.
Yeah, but you haven't died.
I see, yeah.
It's exactly the
just
same.
Changed.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, okay.
It's the other way around because the language long ago was old. Long ago we were young.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you.
Okay, but honestly, think of a person. Think of your grandmother when she was a little girl, you know, and then, or your parents or yourself,
Yeah.
and that's the language too. It's just that's how it was.
Right.
So in a way, obviously, when the time span is long enough, something has been lost. I mean, we change every day, but
Sure.
it's not a loss as such.
Hmm.
You understand?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's something interesting about sound in that sense of, I mean, the idea of lost and found sound is a very broad kind of brief, but the whole notion of listening and sound itself, because sound is immediately lost unless it's recorded. So we have this intrinsic kind of loss within anything when we discuss sound, whether it be the sound of language, the sound of an instrument, the sound of a voice, or the environment. It's always disappearing.
As the child once said to me, "Where does the music go when you stop playing?"
Mm.